This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let we go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us as always. Want to remind you guys, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet here at the On the Pony Express podcast. Use code PonyUpACC or mention ontheponyexpress.com for a discount on a round-trip flight with StatusJet. They're proud supporters of SMU Athletics and the On the Pony Express podcast, so be sure to find out more about how you can completely change your travel experience by using our friends at StatusJet. They can hook you up with that level of luxury that you would expect from a private jet charter company. Reach out to them today for more info. Lots coming up on the calendar for SMU basketball fans. SMU football, you can start planning your 2025 season. This is a season that'll have a couple of tough places to get to or places that you might just want to fly private. So whether it be with friends, family, whoever, reach out to StatusJet today. All right. Let's get into a lot of SMU recruiting, and there's been a lot coming down the pipeline as far as junior days, as far as National Signing Day getting wrapped up. And we do have 2 new commitments to cover as well on SMU football. So let's start there. SMU football getting a little bit of momentum boost here on the recruiting trail with commitments on back-to-back days last week, one of which came on National Signing Day. And we'll start there with a huge recruiting win for the Mustangs. And that recruiting win goes to one of the more unique names that you might find in the recruiting space, and that's Yaya Gad, committed to SMU on National Signing Day. He took a junior day visit over the weekend, his first trip to SMU. He left with an offer from the program, and he said, you know what, that's where I want to be. And this is a unique story about Yaya and how he ended up at SMU. And if you look at him on Twitter, and if you follow him on Twitter, he is one of the more impressively built defensive linemen that you will find in the 2026 class. He is all of 260 pounds. He is right around that 6'5" range. I've had the confirmed measurement somewhere, but an incredibly just well-built defensive lineman who can bring it. And I think that's what really stands out to me. He's somebody who on tape plays with a really impressive level of aggression. And when you look at him, he's built like a bodybuilder. I mean, truthfully. And he can absolutely get out of it. He's from Medina, Tennessee, goes to South Gibson High School. And we haven't even gotten to his recruiting accolades with offers from Florida, Florida State, Texas, USC. He visited Texas earlier this month, and by all indications on our Texas site, the Longhorns were really in strong position there to land him, and he ends up going to visit SMU a week later, or maybe it was 2 weeks later, and canceled Florida, Florida State. USC were among those in contention to host him, and he ends up picking up the offer and committing. And so the backstory on this one is that he did a lot of his own research when it came to college recruiting and what he wants in a college. And he actually reached out to the SMU coaching staff and let them know he was interested. And so they started, talking a lot and building up that relationship and ended up getting a visit. And they offered on the visit after, having conversations and talking with him. And now SMU has one of the best defensive linemen in the country committed in Yaya. On3 has him as the number 35th overall defensive lineman. Rivals has him as the 25th. He's unranked by 24/7 and ESPN. That'll change at some point here. And the industry ranking will kind of catch up a little bit, I think, with where the other services are. But he's somebody that at least, like on paper, and you look at his measurements and then you look at him, you're kind of like, all right, what's the catch here? You know what I mean? But I think from talking with various sources in terms of looking at his true athletic measurements and just how he actually looks on the field matches up well with what he put, like what he like what his measurements are. That's sometimes the interesting thing with recruiting is you see guys with great tape and then they don't have the measurements, or you see guys with great measurements and they don't have the tape, but they really do feel like at SMU that this is somebody that fits all of the things that they're looking for in a defensive lineman. And so you want to take your chances on these types of guys. He's from, the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, quite frankly. And they drove all the way to SMU to make that visit. And one of the key pieces of it was the business school for SMU. And that really stuck out to them in doing their research on colleges. And that's why he kind of reached out to SMU himself to recruit him, despite having offers from some of these other high profile programs. So a really unique recruiting story there, and how SMU was able to get him. But you will take that 10 times out of 10 to get a guy like him on campus, and then of course committed. So a really nice start on the defensive line for SMU. That was commitment number 3. He joined Cole Leinert, the quarterback, and Xavier Barnett, the wide receiver, in the class. But SMU wasn't done there in the 2026 recruiting class, landing another highly touted commitment the very next day. And we'll touch on that in just a second. But first, do want to remind you guys to reach out to our friend Mark Villasana and get with him about how he can help you and your family explore all your insurance needs and put you in the right position for your coverage and get you with the right rate and the right situation as a whole. That's what Mark Villasana will do for you at Northwest Insurance Agencies. Reach out to him today, Mark V at nwagencies.com. So SMU did pick up another blue chip commitment, and this one didn't have to come all the way from Tennessee. They went into their own backyard and went into Dallas Lake Highlands and landed a commitment from Christian Rhodes, 4-star running back who is a on 300 prospect and one of the better looking prospects you'll see at the running back position in this class. He really has that burst that you'd like to see from the running back position. And he also has some of that kind of measurables and projectable body type that you want to see from the running back. 6'1"-ish, 205 pounds, and he has really long arms. So they would expect him to kind of be like a 220-ish pound back. And they think that, come this spring, his 100-meter time will kind of match up. His 100-meter time, at least on his sophomore year, wasn't over the top good. But when you look at his football speed, it translates. Like, watching him run away from people, watching his ability to make lateral cuts is something that really stands up. And he kind of has that, as one of our message board subscribers pointed out, a very upright running style, like a certain SMU great. So really, really happy for Christian. He had offers from Miami, Ole Miss, TCU, and others, but he took a visit at the beginning of January to SMU all by himself. And he said, let me come back for junior day with the rest of my family and a bigger group. And SMU took his commitment. He announced it in front of the whole crew of prospects that were on campus. And this is a really nice land for Kyle Cooper, Tyler Foster, the running back coaches that SMU has. And they get a guy who's right up 75 in Lake Highlands. That's as good as it gets as far as making the trip for his family. It seems like, you can talk about getting guys from Highland Park, but Lake Highlands, pretty nice trip there for the family to head to SMU games. And he's got that size in a whole nother year, really, before he'll even arrive at SMU. So this is a guy that they're really excited about. They signed a great prospect in Jermico Green, a 4-star running back last cycle. They've been shooting for some of the big fish in recruiting, like KJ Edwards and some of these other high-profile Texas backs, but they wanted Christian Rhodes, and they got him committed this past week. And a big get for SMU to get him on board this early. He's an on 300 prospect. I think he's somebody that's trending in the right direction long term. So a big pickup for SMU to get him in this class of 2026. And just checking out the early rankings as well, SMU now has 4 commitments on board in the class of 2026. That puts them at 31, which is kind of funny because right now they finished in the 2025 class at number 31 as well. So they are shooting much higher than 31. No disrespect to the 2025 class, but this is a program that, as Rhett Lashlee said when meeting with us, the media, it's a program that's on the rise. I mean, they're really trending up in terms of the type of prospect that is interested, the type of prospect that's coming to campus, and the type of prospect that is coming back for official visits. And we'll touch on the official visitors later this week on our third pod of the week. But you look at what they've been able to assemble with this class, landing Dramad Odoms and fending off some schools snooping around there and fending off some in-state rivals in Baylor and TCU for guys like Zay Gentry and Tyron Polley and some of the other prospects that were in this 2025 class. You're looking at a really good situation overall for SMU moving forward. And now you have everything that's coming together, right? You have the college football playoff appearance. You have the new end zone complex. You have the coaching staff stability. Rhett Lashlee said in his signing day press conference, he expects the entire coaching staff back, which is pretty impressive because, going into this year, they obviously had some changes, minor any assistant coach changing is not minor, but you had De'Aaron King in his first year as quarterbacks coach taking over for Johnny Brewer, who left for Duke. And I think that this year was maybe the year that you had Kyle Cooper taking over running backs coach, I'm pretty sure. And you had Scott Simons moving back to safeties. You had Sam Dunham in his first year as edge coaches or as edge coach. And, this is a coaching staff to have everybody back in place. It should pay dividends in a 2026 class that, at least with the scholarship board and you look at it, they're not going to necessarily, by my count, lose as many seniors. They lost. They had 24 seniors by my count, but they had guys that, didn't return. A couple that entered the portal. You had Preston who left. They had about 30 spots, and this year on 2025. It could be very similar. And that's to say, too, that 2024 is not necessarily done. You do have the spring portal window. I do expect there to be some guys that transfer out after the spring window just because you'll have that work in the spring and guys will know where they stand. And I think the staff does a good job of, talking about it with players and saying, look, we have opportunity for you. And if you want to prove it, we'll always give people that earned time when you put it all together. But look, you've got an uphill battle. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. They have developed a really strong relationship with pretty much all of these players. It's why the culture is so important to this team. That's why sometimes they don't go after certain players and they don't want to bring in certain players at certain situations because they have good groups that they get the most out of. And I think that's really important. And it's part of a larger roster construction conversation, of course. But when you look at what SMU has, the part of the reason why SMU made the college football playoff, made the ACC championship last year is because of their culture, because of how hard they work, because of how they are able to put together good weeks of practice, good weeks in the film room, and just an overall team unity and bond that makes guys play even harder for each other. And they needed a little reminder of that early this year, but you had a roster that was constructed with a great culture that was able to overcome a just slight sense of entitlement is probably not the right word, but a casualness of we just won the AAC. we're coming in here. We got all these new players. We'll be all right. Well, Nevada was a wake up, and then BYU was certainly the big wake up. Yeah, they needed to change the starting quarterback, and it paid off. But a lot of that came after was built into the culture where, okay, wake up call received. Let's go out and do what we did in the past that got us here. And a part of all of that is building a strong culture. So that's where I think this team once again will have another opportunity to be at the top of the at the top of the ACC. I thought those days were behind us, but at the top of the ACC and play for another spot in a college football playoff because they have a culture that's really strong and in a good situation as a whole. And that's why they can bring in a Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback, which Rhett Lashlee confirmed. They're really not expecting him to play in 2025. He'll sit. He'll have another opportunity in 2026 to then either go somewhere else, which Rhett actually just flat out said, or we'll be able to compete if SMU has that opportunity available for him to compete for playing time and or starting job. You know, if Kevin Jennings kills it and goes on to try his luck in the pros, or if it doesn't pan out, they know Tyler, they know what he brings, so have an opportunity to compete. So that's a strong culture. And that's why you can go out and you can bring in a Zion Nelson when you have a Savion Byrd and you have a PJ Williams and you have an Andrew Chamblee. I mean, those are four guys that truthfully, let's just group them as tackles for now. They're probably like, oh, man, like that's some competition. Like I thought I was going to get, not given anything, but most of the time, if you see that happen, it's immediate. Like at other schools, you're like, man, I brought in another guy like this, that, like even bringing in Andrew Chamblee last year, those guys like at other schools might've been like, man, but because the culture is in a good situation, they can always bring in more competition. And I'll add that on the one side of players probably leaving after spring, like I don't think SMU is going to finish with 3 or 4 or whatever it guys in the portal. They're going to end up with more. I think this team's not done adding either. And that's where the new scholarship limit or roster limit, of 105 comes into play. And I was talking with somebody about this last week, and I did want to mention it on the pod. There is a 105 person 105 person roster limit. That doesn't mean it'll be 105 scholarship players. What that does mean is that as we sit here today, by my rough count, SMU has 94 scholarship players. Now, I expect that to maybe not be the number, or could go up, could go down. I mean, truthfully, that's something that's not final, but they're safely within what they can do. They have the ability to go up to 105 if they wanted to, which would be a little crazy with scholarship spending and potential rev share negotiations or whatever. Most schools are not going to 105 in terms of scholarship players. But what it does give you now is wiggle room. I mean, that crunch of having an 85 for good teams was tough to get under. Like if you think about the 85 being in place right now, you go up and down my rough scholarship board, which if you go to ontheponyexpress.com, subscribe for just $1 for your first 2 months using the code SMU1, that's SMU the number 1, that gets you 2 months of coverage for just $1. Special podcast promo there. You'll see, wow, there's like 94 by my count SMU scholarship players. And if you were looking at this roster and looking at it from an 85 perspective, you're like, well, I mean, I know where I'd cut some guys, or you'd encourage transfers, or you'd whatever, but you're also like, man, you really got to let that guy go, or you got to have a honest conversation that they're not going to play. They should probably move on. You don't see many guys that you're like, man, really like, you really, you don't want to lose any of them. I mean, truthfully, there are a couple guys that aren't ever going to play, but they're not bad people. They're not bad players. the depth and the roster construction is in a really good place. There's maybe one or two guys that you're like, and unless you get a clear upgrade in a major way, you understand their role and they're okay. So that's where SMU's roster construction has really seen a change in the future. And that's where Rhett Lashlee, I think, is so excited in his comments at National Signing Day of the type of player that they can go after and that they're having on campus in 2026 for junior days and visits, but also just the overall transfer mindset of this team and who they bring in and what they can bring in and how they can continue to add to their talent pool. Like, I think that's so important for SMU to continue to be able to put that together. I mean, it's truthfully, it's really unique in terms of the college football space to be able to get that, and it should be something that's continuously talked about and continuously, hit on when it comes to talking about this team and talking about where they're going and all of those things. I really do. I just think it's really exciting stuff to look at this program and see where they're headed when it comes to constructing the roster. So before we get into some other closing thoughts here, I do want to remind you guys that Roback is a proud partner of the On the Pony Express podcast. Head to roback.com today, RHOBACK.com, and learn more about how you can get best outfitted for game day with Roback. And we have a special code for you guys. That's Pony Express 20. That's Pony Express 20. Gets you 20% off your first order at Roback, RHOBACK.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the usual suspects of great choices there for your attire for SMU basketball games, SMU football, spring practice is coming up. So if you catch a game, you can get to Roback today and check them out and get them hooked up on your apparel. And that is the code Pony Express 20 for 20% off your order at roback.com today. I'll also add that we are selling On the Pony Express merchandise as well. So you can head to ontheponyexpress.com to get our special branded pullover, polo, new hat. This is kind of the style here of the hat. This is the rope hat from Imperial. So you can kind of get a look at it here. Just imagine the Pony Express logo. And then we're doing vests too. Had some requests for vests, had some people jump on that. So check them out. Just another opportunity to diversify your apparel there if you're an On the Pony Express fan. So I'll post the link on in the bio of the episode as well if you want to check out those options. So appreciate those of you who have jumped on those as well. All right. Rhett Lashlee wrapped up his signing day comments in terms of the team and just kind of where things are headed with a ton of excitement about where things are going. And if you were at the signing day event after his comments, I loved running into some of you guys as well, or the ones that I did talk to, but saw a bunch of familiar faces that have long been on the Pony Express message board. So appreciate you guys for coming up to me and saying hello. So don't be strangers at those events. We've got some events that we're kind of in the planning process of right now as well. So be on the lookout for those as the spring turns into, early summer, really trying to do some fun events for you guys, our On the Pony Express listeners and subscribers, kind of build some things up. And I think for those of you who have been able to get around those events, you enjoyed them, and we'll do some fun things as we continue to kind of build up this family we've got. But SMU football does have a few notes to know for you guys when it comes to some of these guys who signed. And one note that I'll pass along is I'm keeping an eye on one prospect that did sign with SMU. He is close enough grades wise that SMU did sign him, but Devin Ferris is a guy that's been passed along to me as somebody who you want to keep an eye on to see if he makes it to campus this summer. and joins the team. So Devin Ferris, he picked SMU over Mississippi State, Pitt, a couple other programs, Houston. He was a longtime SMU lean, like even before, like his first junior day visit, he was blown away and kind of told me like, oh, I'm going to commit this summer. And the official visit in May sealed the deal. But he is one to keep an eye on as SMU goes through the recruiting process and or not the recruiting process, but the admissions process with him. His grades might not get there. And then you did have Jacob Mayava, another 2026 or 2025 prospect, I should say, that signed with UCF. He was somebody that SMU did not at all expect into the class after I guess it was late last semester that they got his grades and realized that they weren't going to be able to take him. So UCF a little bit more lenient on that stuff. They signed him and got him on board on signing day. But he had kind of changed some high schools and don't know what happened. And it's unfortunate because he was pretty excited about SMU, but just ended up signing with UCF. And so they're taking his commitment. And then we're keeping a close eye on Rocket Rahimi as well. He was a big addition for SMU out of the transfer portal and it was a one-time SMU commit and now is committed as well to the program. But he does need a waiver from what I understand to play. And this is kind of the wild world of college athletics that we are dealing with right now, but there is some uncertainty as to whether he will get that or not. He is one of the best transfer additions. I know it said enrolled on his profile page if you're watching right now, but that was what I was told, and then here we are. But Rocket Rahimi did not get announced as a signee, and they are going through the process with him as far as figuring out how they can best help get him a waiver and see if they can get him into school and all of that stuff. So that would be an interesting hit to that defensive back safety room there. That does kind of build off of a couple of things that I heard throughout the last month or so, that SMU will keep looking at additional defensive back prospects. They love Lamadrick Spencer. They took Rocket's commitment when, truthfully, I mean, they didn't have the defensive line haul that they did, or that they did sign, and everyone did make it to campus. So it was kind of one of those things where they were like, all right, let's continue to try to stockpile as best we can here, knowing that it's kind of a wild west with defensive linemen. And talking with Calvin Thibodeau, I mean, he said it is as competitive as you would expect recruiting these transfer defensive linemen. And so they took Rocket's commitment, saying, all right, let's get this guy on board 1 year, can help the room. You could always, continuously add talent. And so we'll kind of see what happens with his waiver and that process, but he is not on campus. So I'll edit his profile after this episode to begin with. But that is something to know when it comes to him not being on the signing list and also not being enrolled. So one other quick note, SMU also signed Zion Nelson, the big offensive tackle who played for SMU's coaches at Miami. And when they left Miami, he was viewed as a first-round draft pick, and things were going up. And he ran into some injuries, unfortunately. And the latest is that he did just have a procedure done on his knee that they really feel like is going to be in a good situation to for him to play and for him to contribute. And so Garen Justice said that, and I haven't seen him on crutches and things like that. I met him on the day that he arrived for check-in, and he is a massive human and looks the part as far as weight and things like that. But that procedure on his knee and figuring that out is something that they're watching very closely to see if that takes. And if so, then they're, got a guy who can really plug in and I mean, he's really good when he's healthy. So a big opportunity for SMU to get Zion Nelson back into the fold if that procedure takes. So those are some of the signing day takeaways for you guys. Wanted to share those and continue to kind of keep you guys up to date on the podcast side of things. But later this week, we'll talk about official visitors. Big summer shaping up for SMU. They are going to have some of their best and top targets on campus for a couple of key weekends. So we're keeping an eye on all of those. We're going to update you guys on some of those on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. But please support the podcast by going to ontheponyexpress.com and signing up using code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1, for just $1. And that gets you 2 months of access to ontheponyexpress.com. Don't miss out on this offer. If you're a podcast listener, be sure to jump on it today and join us at ontheponyexpress.com. So appreciate all of you guys who are on the message board chatting with us day in, day out. Hope you guys enjoy tonight's basketball game with SMU Pitt taking center stage at 8 p.m. on ACC Network, live from Moody Coliseum. We'll have your updates at ontheponyexpress.com. Till next time, guys, thanks for listening to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.